artists, and welcome to another Toon Boom interview. Our guest today is Stephanie Alexander. Stephanie is a freelance animator, artist, and graduate from LCAD. She is currently working as a storyboard revisionist and has in-betweened animated segments in a major motion picture. You know, the one from 2018 that starred Emily Blunt. We invited Stephanie onto today's stream to talk about her experience graduating from an animation program, entering the industry, finding community online, and working alongside her animation heroes. Stephanie, welcome to the stream.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this. Yay.
All right. So, as someone who graduated relatively recently, what was your experience like entering this industry?
So my experience, I think, was pretty unique, at least for the industry at large. My first job coming pretty much straight out of school was as an in-betweener on Mary Poppins Returns at Duncan Studio for the animated segment in that movie. It was all done traditional animation, pencil on paper, and I was pretty much surrounded by these industry pros and Disney animators and these guys who I had grown up watching their films and their work, and incredible experience, not really something that I think really happens a lot these days. And it kind of really inspired me to, keep pursuing animation. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Great year. Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, which characters were you doing in between animation on?
So I had a hand in a lot of the scenes. I helped most of the animators at some point or another, did a lot of the like crowd animation and the dancing and things like that. But one thing I specifically did a lot of was in-betweening for the wolf character. That was Chris Save's character, and he used me a lot to in-between for him. And it was a lot of fun because it was this really cool, very evil character that just was very sly, and I just loved animating, not just because the character was cool, but Chris as an animator was really awesome. So I really had a hand in a lot of it. All the in-betweeners did. And we also got to do some crowd animation ourselves, which was awesome. We got to actually animate ourselves some of the shots of like the theater and things like that. So, yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, what are some of your favorite actions to animate?
Oh gosh, I love dancing. That's a lot of fun for me. Anything that kind of has a natural flow and rhythm to it. And I also love subtle acting. So just quieter moments where you can kind of see a character thinking before they speak or reacting to something. I did a short film for school that was all no dialogue. So you really have to think about like giving time for characters to emote properly, to process information and get across what they're thinking without actually having them say anything. And I think that's a lot of fun.
What did you expect the industry would be like, and were there any surprises along the way?
Yeah, so with the school that I went to, it was very kind of focused on traditional animation and kind of this old school way of working in the industry. And it was interesting, like I said, because my first experience was kind of this old school thing, so much as like it was almost like being in your Renaissance age Disney studio space with all the animators. So my first year, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is the industry. This is what it's like. And then I finished on Poppins and realized, oh, actually, there's not a lot of jobs like this here. There's more digital work and storyboard and all that stuff that I'd done in Poppins, mostly overseas. So I started to actually figure out what I needed to do to keep, working in this industry, which meant going more into the direction of board work.
What was it like drawing alongside animators and artists whose work inspired you?
It was so cool. There were several. In betweening for me, it is something I can do while watching, shows or videos or listening to music. So often I would watch like animated stuff while working, and several times I would have animators come by and be like, "Hey, I animated that. I did that effect there. I did that character moment, and I'd be like, oh my God, that specifically inspired me to like want to explore this thing in my animation or something like that. So, I mean, every day it was awesome. Honest, it was very inspirational, and it's an experience that I hold very dear to my heart.
I hate to put you on the spot, but what are some of the moments in animation that really inspired you?
Ooh, I think hmm, one of the big ones for me was the Firebird Suite in Fantasia 2000. I saw that in theaters as a kid, and it was so different from a lot of what I'd seen before, where it was just very focused on these quiet moments and animating to music and this beautiful sprite character that was just very full of life and energy, and her whole journey through that. I remember that like specifically started to make me think about animating, but also behind the scene features on like Disney VHSs, man. Like there was a Tarzan uh, behind the scenes thing right before the Mulan VHS where like you see Glen Keane like animating Tarzan while looking at skateboarders, and I was like, oh, that's how they do it. Oh, that's really cool. And yeah, just that kind of built up in me over the years, and I kept, every time I thought about doing something else, I just kind of naturally came back to, no, I want to do that. I want to be in that world.
I noticed that you don't see a lot of special features on streaming video.
You don't, and it is kind of a shame. I think we do see some of it. I know that Disney has their big like Frozen 2 5-part documentary on Disney Plus, and you can find stuff on YouTube. You can find those things, but it does kind of feel like more and more that's becoming a lost art. When I used to watch like all those on DVDs, so like the Pixar ones in particular, seeing them do like Nerf gun battles and stuff. It's like, oh, that looks like so much fun. I want to do that. So I hope we
I
find a
saw
way to
that,
bring that back in. Yeah.
yeah. I saw that you volunteered with Animation Resources to do portfolio reviews. What is it
Hmm.
like being on the other side of the table at that kind of event?
It is almost as stressful as, being the one being reviewed, because for me, there's a lot of pressure to say the right things and both give a fair critique to this person and also help under, give them a fair critique, have them walk away understanding what they can do to improve, and not making them doubt themselves in that sense. I never want somebody to walk away from me thinking, oh, this is totally wrong for me. Because I do think that pretty much everybody, if they put in the energy and effort, can eventually have that portfolio that gets them that job. So it's a bit of a balancing act. It's something I develop every time I do a portfolio review. It's a skill set in itself. Um, I think I'm getting better at it, but it is pretty stressful still. So, you know.
Yeah. I guess there's sort of the balance of like you don't want to crush someone's spirit, but you also don't want to leave someone like unprepared for like an actual application.
Yeah, you don't want, somebody to think that they've got they've got this in the bag when, they still might need to tweak some things or learn some specific skill sets. It's tough. It is tough.
What are some common pieces of feedback that might be helpful for artists entering the industry when it comes to their portfolios?
So I think there's kind of two things. There's the portfolio itself, and then there's kind of drawing skills. So when it comes to the portfolio, I think you really need to have a strong point of view. Unless you're going for like a generalist position, you need to kind of cater your portfolio to what it is you want to do or what the job is that you're applying for. So if you're doing a background art portfolio, you don't want to have too much like character stuff in there or like turnarounds or all these character design things. You want it to be about backgrounds. You want it to be about developing environments, and you want it to reflect that more than characters. So making sure that your point of view is represented, and that when somebody looks through your portfolio, they know what it is you want to do off the cuff. And then the kind of general drawing advice is really draftsmanship. It's really about, are you putting the time into making things read clearly? Figure work, I think, is really helpful with that. I don't think every portfolio needs to have figure drawing, but I found that if you do figure drawing work, it helps with every other aspect of drawing. There's just so much in the human form that can be applied to other parts of art and study. So for me, draftsmanship's a big one. So just making sure that you really understand things like straights and curves and push and pull and contrapposta and pasto, whatever, all that fun stuff. You really want to make
I know,
sure.
contrapposta sounds good.
It does sound yummy. I would love some of that. So yeah, just making sure that you kind of, point of view and your actual drawing skills being strong and direct.
Was there any specific feedback that you received that really helped you?
I think for me, I got a lot because my portfolio or my demo reel was all traditional because that's what my school taught. One thing I did learn pretty quick is that you should have some digital information in your portfolio. Even if your skills might be great, but you should also show some competency in the actual programs that you're going to be using. You're not necessarily going to be taught them on the job, or at least you need to have a basic understanding. So that was the feedback I probably got the most, was you need to know how to do digital. And I'm still learning how to digitally animate. That's still kind of the space that I'm slowly kind of chipping away at. And using, a program like Harmony has helped a lot with that. Experimented with both like puppet animation and traditional, and it's a lot of fun for that. Yeah.
In your experience, what do you find different between animating on pen and paper and animating using digital tools like Harmony?
So I think the actual process can be very similar if you go in with the same mindset, I think, as traditional animation to digital. It is mostly the same process. I think one thing that we tend to rely on a lot when working digitally is onion skinning and kind of being able to see all your drawings on top of each other, unlike you really would if we were working traditionally. And sometimes that can flatten the drawings themselves as you start to go in and like in between and things like that. So I think for me, when I'm working digitally, I need to make a conscious effort to think spatially and think about volumes and think about just keeping the character feeling solid. But really, that's the biggest thing for me, at least on like a mental aspect. Like I said, there's still a lot that I'm learning about actually animating the program and using tools as shortcuts in a way that doesn't then go on to cheapen your animation. So I think learning that balance is really useful.
Yeah, I got a comment in the chat from Chaos Thoughts asking, were there things in the industry that you learned that you never knew before you got in? And is there a way to learn those things before being in the industry? So I think they're looking for a heads
Yeah.
up.
Okay. So after Poppins, like I said, I kind of went in like, oh no, I don't actually know like everything I need to know for getting a job. And I went unemployed for I think like 6 or 7 months before I decided to finally sit down and be like, all right, I'm going to learn Storyboard Pro. And I was studying Storyboard Pro using the Toon Boom, using the tutorials you guys have for a week. And then I got a request to come in and interview for Muppet Babies and take a test. And I knew just enough from that week of learning to be able to take the test and submit it and like get through and be hired on. So I think it's going to be a mixed bag for everything, but you don't need to know every aspect of every program or every type of animation technique, or you don't need to know everything. You just need to kind of figure out what it is that you need to focus on and what you need to know to show that you're competent enough to learn more. So I would say, if there's a weakness that you have, start trying to fill in that gap. Start trying to, study the programs or the techniques that you want to know. but still go for it. Still apply to places. Still contact your network and keep them updated with your progress. And you'll learn a lot on the job, because I certainly have, like, just natural with both jobs, with the in-betweening and with storyboarding. You do learn a whole lot just being there and doing the work.
Yeah. When we were talking earlier, you mentioned that a big part of the hiring process is
Mm-hmm.
tests. Do you have any advice for people who are going into their first test at a studio?
Um, I mean, with both of them, I just tried to do my best to think of what they were looking from me. So what was interesting with, like, the Muppet Babies test, I was not given, like, a script. I was not given a scenario. They just said, "Here's the models. Here's the babies. We just want to see you draw them doing stuff." And so I tried to look at the parameters of the test and be like, okay, what do they probably want to see from me, and how do I demonstrate that? So I think studying what it is, if you're able to, if it's an in-progress show or an in-progress game or whatever, try to familiarize yourself with the look of the show, the design of the show, or if you don't know what it is, try looking for similar things. If it's an action show, look at other action shows and try to emulate that in a way that also shows, like, what you bring to the table as a board artist or animator or whatever it is that you're applying to do.
In your view, what makes someone a really strong storyboard artist? Or what do you
Hmm.
aspire to grow towards?
I mean, that's a big question. It's honestly something I'm still learning and figuring out, because I don't know everything about boarding. For instance, our show uses 3D backgrounds. We use, like, a 3D set to take screenshots, and we just draw the characters on top. So perspective and environment is a field I'm still figuring out. Um, so I think for me, I don't know. Just what was the question again? I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
I guess my question is, maybe for people who are not as familiar with storyboarding, what does a good storyboard artist do?
I think the big thing is they utilize basically the camera and environments in a really effective way. You are essentially a director. You are the cameraman. You are the actor. You are all of these things, and you need to bring them together in a way that effectively tells the story that you are trying to tell. So I think the strongest board artist is actually the strongest storyteller and the strongest visual storyteller. So in that sense, I would explore, not just animated properties, but you want to go back and look at film. I actually have here, this is a book that we got for school called The 5 C's of Cinematography. And this is specifically about film cinematography, not animation, but it has a lot of useful tools and examples of how to use film technique when you're making a movie. And it's got diagrams, and it's you want to look back at the reference material you have and kind of learn from that.
Yeah. So it's kind of like when to use a medium shot, when to use a close up, the different types of camera moves you can do.
Yeah, yeah.
So actually, I wanted to ask you. So I heard you
Mm-hmm.
mention that before you were studying animation, you picked up every visual development book you could get your hands on.
Mm-hmm.
What resources would you recommend to new animators, and which have been particularly helpful to you?
So there are the two big ones that I think everybody is told to get if you want to animate, which is the Animator Survival Kit and, oh God, The Illusion of Life, which is a
It's a heavy
big
one.
book. It's a heavy one. The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnson. So these are both books that really go into the principles of animation, the techniques of animation, how to tell a story. Um, the Illusion of Life is really about the Disney process from start to finish, how to build a story, what processes go into old school animation, coloring, things like that. And then the animator's survival kit is more about the actual technique of animating, specifically a lot of stuff on movement. And so this is really helpful. There's also a DVD set that comes with this, if you can get your hands on it, with all of Richard Williams' lectures. If you want something small and short, the Character Animation Crash Course by Eric Goldberg is a really good reference. As you can see, it is not as big as those other ones, so it's not as scary, but it captures pretty much the exact same concepts. And then my last kind of, I do have a list of, I made a list of books a while ago to send to people when asking about this. So there should probably be a link for that being posted. But in addition, I always recommend this book to artists. It's called Draw Stronger, Self-Care for Cartoonists and Visual Artists. This is a physically taxing career, which you wouldn't think because you're sitting all day, but because you are sitting all day, you are hurting yourself. And that's all about exercises and stretches you can do periodically throughout your day to try to mitigate a lot of those nerve pains, joint pains, things that you'll kind of develop just from sitting all day and moving very repetitiously all day. So those are
Yeah,
kind of my
ergonomics
main.
is no joke. If you're watching this right now, we've been talking for about 25 minutes, so this is a good time to just get up, do a little stretch, and sit back down.
Yeah, wiggle those shoulders out.
Yeah. So what do you enjoy most about working in animation?
Um, God, there's a lot that I enjoy about it. It's I love how collaborative it is. As an industry, you're working with so many unique people of so many different skill sets and backgrounds and different points of view, and so you're constantly surrounded by interesting people, which I think is awesome because animation just pulls in interesting people. You don't really meet a lot of what I would say boring people working in animation. Um, and then for me, it's just the process of animating itself, of having a blank sheet of paper in front of you, of starting with the a sentence of a story, um, and developing that into a real narrative, into living, breathing, thinking characters that aren't actually real. It's just drawings on paper or 3D models being, puppeted. Um, that to me is pretty much like magic. It's this very awe-inspiring experience to have, and every time I animate something, there's just that part, and it's like, oh, that looks really cool, even if it's not really doing anything. It's like, oh, but it's walking. Oh, but it's turned its head and it's thinking. Like, I just think that's so cool.
The illusion of life.
Exactly.
Stephanie, how would you like to see the animation industry grow and evolve?
So I think right now, at least this is I'm in LA. I work at a studio in Glendale. So my perspective is very much in this kind of LA animation bubble, or at least a very kind of North America centric bubble. My hope, and I think if there's one kind of silver lining to this awful pandemic, there is now infrastructure within all these studios to allow for remote work and to allow for people to do this from their homes. And my hope is that as we get out of the pandemic first, and as the industry grows, we will start to kind of see this hybrid model of both studio, because I love working in a studio. So having the ability to work in a studio and also the ability to work from home and kind of create more opportunities outside of just this bubble that we're in, and really just see more collaboration in that way. That's kind of where I'd love to see it go, and start to see more hubs pop up in places that aren't, just California.
Yeah, we got a question in the chat from Lucas from Brazil, who mentioned that they recently graduated from mechanical engineering, but their real passion is
Mm.
animation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to have an animation education to get into the industry? And do you know people who don't?
Yeah, you do not need to have a formal degree in animation. I think for me personally, I had a mixed experience with it overall, but I think I ultimately benefited from it. But I know plenty of people that don't have degrees or, dropped out from the school they went to, or, I saw a lot of people drop out of LCAD and go on to have animation careers. So no, you don't need a degree. You just need to have the skill set. You need to have the understanding and the drawing ability, all that fun stuff, whatever you need technically for the skill, for the job that you want, but also the network. You need to be able to have connections with people to help you get your foot in the door. That's really kind of it's a bit of luck, it's a bit of who you know, it's a bit of what you know, right place, right time. It's kind of all those things, but you have to kind of create that for yourself.
Yeah, and also, if you are really interested in getting into animation, the book Stephanie mentioned, particularly The Illusion of Life and The Animator Survival Kit, are really good books to look for from your local libraries.
Mm-hmm.
So that is definitely a great resource to look into. Stephanie, because there have been fewer in-person events for animation this
Mm-hmm.
year, how do you recommend finding community online?
So I think there's kind of two routes to it. There's the kind of social media in general, and then there's kind of the more direct conversation, which I've achieved mostly through Discord, which is actually how I connected with you guys at Toon Boom, was because we were on a server together. I found that Discord specifically has been an awesome resource because it you can create a specific server with an audience in mind, bring in those people and have them directly interacting with each other in the chat and creating bonds and sharing their work. It's just not something I've really seen on other platforms before. And that's been really cool to explore. I'm in, several different groups, and they all kind of have different vibes and different people in them, but some crossover as well. And it's really, I think that that's kind of where to go for networking, as it were, right now.
Do you want to talk briefly about some of the Discord communities that you're involved with and why Discord is a particularly good place to find community?
Yeah, so one of the big ones, the one that I met you guys through, is called Traditional Animation. It's a mix of enthusiasts and people that really love animation but don't really seek a career in it, and then a lot of people that do work in it or want to work in it. It's a very large group, and there's a lot of crossover and interaction between these groups, and that's a lot of fun. I'm specifically, I think that some of the smaller groups and the more focused groups have also been awesome. I'm in the, I think, Creative Talent Network Discord. I'm in the Women in Animation one. Hello, Kitty. Um, I'm in the Lightbox Expo one, and I've recently started my own to kind of uh, bridge this gap between industry and students and things like that. So um, there are, I think, a lot of communities. I would say, if you can, look for the ones that have focus on being more network opportunities and being more about personal growth rather than just being fans of animation. Those are fun too, but yeah, I would search for the ones that are specific to the industry, or at least to making a career out of this. Not necessarily industry, but you know, animation adjacent careers.
Yeah. Stephanie, at the top of the show, I mentioned that a big part of your career right now is freelance work. What is it like
Mm-hmm.
juggling freelance work and a studio job?
So it's a bit of a struggle to balance the two. Freelance is something I very actively choose to do, mostly because my freelance is animation related, and I love animating. I get a lot of enjoyment out of board work, but I do really like the process of animating too. So for me, it's kind of a sacrifice that I'm willing to make to be able to continue animating as a career. But it is tricky because essentially I work full time as a board artist right now. And in my free time, when I've got career, all of that a lot of it goes to working on that freelance. So I lose my evenings, I might lose my mornings, I might lose one of my days on the weekend. I always try to keep one open just for myself because I do believe in achieving some sense of work-life balance. I don't. It's not something I need to do out of necessity. I would be fine with just the board work, but I do really enjoy also doing freelance and kind of setting my own rates and hours and things like that, and working on these smaller projects in addition to the larger ones. So if you're gonna go down that route, I would make sure it's you're selective about what you do, and that it's something you truly want to do. And give yourself breaks between the freelance projects too. Don't just keep doing it because you're gonna lose your mind.
Yes, definitely. Um, One of the biggest questions I see about freelance work in animation is just how. So how do you negotiate with clients about scope and set freelance rates?
So that's honestly still a skill I'm learning. Negotiating, I think, can only be done. You can only really learn to do it as you do it. So my advice in general when it comes to like setting rates and things is starting out, be ready for some trial and error. You're probably going to rate yourself too low to start on your first couple projects, and that's okay, so long as you keep adjusting. Um, so for me, when I know I need to negotiate, I try to, think of what I need to say, think of why I need to negotiate more. Really try to reason like what that number means, what's actually going into it. So, like I said, I freelance in my free time. So if my free time has a lot of value for me and I'm not so big into a project that I've been offered, I might charge more because it's like, well, I don't really want to do this that much. So I might charge more. Uh, there is a freelance calculator that I provided a link for. There are tons of freelance calculators online. This is just one that I use. It's a Google Doc. You can enter in all of your living expenses and tax rates and all that fun adult stuff, and it'll pop out a number at the end, uh, and that will basically be your rate, or at least a starting point for your rate. You can also look at the Animation Guild wage surveys that they've done. Their wage rates, they negotiate for union studios rates every 3 years, I think, and they are transparent about what those rates are that they've negotiated for, how they go up every year. So you can look at that and be like, oh, okay, so a board artist makes, $50 an hour. Well, so that's for a studio work. So I'm taking care of my own insurance and da 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 da. So I have to charge a little bit more than that. And then the last book I've got, this is the handbook, sorry, the Graphic Artists Guild Handbook, Pricing and Ethical Guidelines. So this is a big book basically covering a bunch of different artistic fields and freelance rates and contracts and negotiating and what you need to do for all these different focuses. It's really useful, even if only one chapter applies to you. It is still cool to kind of go through and look at all the different rates and information. So I would recommend getting that, or at least trying to find a copy. Yeah.
Yeah, the Animation Guild is such a great resource for that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you market your work as a freelancer? How do you go and scare up work?
Mm-hmm. Well, so for me, I've been blessed with the fact that I haven't had to really put my work out there very much because a lot of the opportunities I get are from the network that I have. So both of the freelance projects I've been on the last 2 years have been with the animation director for the Poppins sequence. So he has his own studio in San Francisco, and he asked me to come on and animate on a couple different projects with him. So that wasn't something I needed to make a portfolio for or a demo reel for because he knew my work. He knew what I was capable of, and he just was like, all right, here you go. So I that's honestly an area that I will probably someday have to really get into and start to figure out how do I market myself? How do I get myself out there? But for me, my network has been such an important part of this process. And I do rely heavily on it. So,
Yeah, I do think that when colleagues are familiar with with your work and know that you can get a job done, that can really go a
Hmm.
long way towards that. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I ask a lot of artists on the stream, what are some misconceptions that people outside of animation have about how the industry works?
Um, I mean, with kind of YouTube and this like push towards animation critique, I think there's a lot of a lot of misconception that spreads about the process and who's responsible for what. And when things don't quite go the way people want, like the way that the audience wants, like who's responsible, who did it, and they try to find somebody to blame in this when it's really much both more complicated and more simple than that, I guess. It productions just work the way that they work, and I think people that aren't in the middle of it try to glean what they can from what industry folk put out there and what they see in like behind the scenes. And that's just a part of it. You know, like I said, we see in Pixar's documentaries they put on their DVDs, everybody's having Nerf gun battles and jumping in pools and having a great time. What they don't show you is like really heated, story meetings that happen. They don't show you like the guy that's staying up till like 2 in the morning working on an animated sequence that he has to totally rework because they didn't like some of his acting choices. Um, it's it's a mixed bag, I guess, and I don't think I think you kind of have to be in it to fully understand it. But I think if people just approach with good intentions and asking questions, there wouldn't be so much misunderstanding happening.
Yeah, curiosity can go a long way, and also if the production process was entirely Nerf gun fights, the movie probably wouldn't get made.
Probably not.
Stephanie, what are some of your favorite TV shows that are animated that are currently on the air?
So Hilda is coming out with season 2 later this month, and I'm very excited for that. I think it is an incredibly beautiful show. I love that it kind of has this Western approach to the aesthetics and the animation style while having kind of these more Japanese animation, these more Eastern inspired story beats and kind of quiet moments. And some of the designs of things are very much in that realm. I just think it's a really beautiful story. It's not on the air anymore, but BoJack Horseman I thought was awesome. It was really cool to see I don't know, just this kind of sitcom style adult cartoon show that um, was really raw and kind of covered the whole gambit of like human emotions and human experiences and wasn't just like, A plot, B plot, gag, flashback, gag. It kind of went deeper than that. And I thought that was really an incredible thing to see in animation.
Yeah, I think animation's really good at playing with structure and form of genres.
Hmm.
Are there any genres that you'd like to see played with more in animation?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of horror at all, but I would love to see more animated horror. I think that um, animation really lends itself to obviously creating atmosphere, and and you can make anything in it. You can make cute things, you can make scary things, and we just don't see a lot going on in the horror in that genre with animation. You've got like Coraline, and you've got, I think, if you look at practical effects back in the day, uh, a lot of animation techniques were used to make scary things, like the Pee Wee's Big Adventure scene with the truck driver. Like
Oh no.
that's animation. Yeah, that's animation, and it's scary. It jumps you out of your chair. But there hasn't been a lot of like I guess long form animation that has broached that genre. So I would love to see more of that, even if I know it would scare me and make me cry. I still want to see it.
Yeah. Stephanie, we have about 15 minutes left. I want to give you an opportunity if there's any projects you want to plug or if you want to direct our viewers to go see more of your work. Where can they do that?
So I've got my website, which is stephanieanimates.com. That has links to like my socials and stuff. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. This Friday, so I'm a reoccurring guest on BuzzFeed's Draw Off on that series of theirs. So we are starting up new episodes this Friday, or this Saturday, excuse me, which is also my birthday. So I'm really excited to, see the new episodes come out. So keep an eye out for that on Saturday. And then, yeah, Muppet Babies. We're wrapping up season 3 right now and should probably be airing in the next year or so. Everything else is under NDA or got messed up by COVID. So you'll just have to wait for that. There's Philharmonia Fantastique, which is supposed to premiere, was supposed to premiere the week that we all went into lockdown in San Francisco. And then we went into lockdown. So anyway,
What is it like working on a project where you're adapting, a character that has a lot of sentiment behind it, like the Muppets in particular?
Oh, it's tough. With Muppet Babies, there's a writing team, so they're responsible for writing the episodes, and then the board artists board the script. And then what's interesting is at the revision process, we still do a lot of changes. And I don't know if this is my first revisionist job. I don't know if every studio is like this, but we have sometimes almost completely rewritten scripts from the ground up. And when I say we, I mostly mean my director, but when I've been in the room discussing this, I will sometimes try to help out too and contribute. You want to be loyal to what the fans want, but you also want to bring in this new audience, which in our case, Muppet Babies is very much a preschool show. It's not kind of what it was in the 80s, where it's kind of this general fun animated kids thing. This is kind of more about specifically teaching empathy to children, teaching imagination, play styles. So I think it's about striking that balance between the two, keeping the humor, but also keeping the humor and the thing that makes Muppet Babies so unique, while also, hitting the I guess the goalposts that you set up for it. It's a balancing act for sure, and yeah, we can't get as crazy as I think some people wish we could because it's a preschool show. But,
Are there things that you like about making content targeted at like early childhood audiences?
Certainly I would love to start adapting, or start kind of expanding to wider audience things down the line. But I do love working on preschool shows. I think I love capturing like the mannerisms of kids with the acting choices that we make. Kind of going through those thought processes. When we have kind of sat down to rework something, I try to think about my own childhood experience and what I as a kid would have had happen, or what I would have tried to do in a situation. I like connecting on that level, and it's also just really cute to like see little kids that love your stuff. Like that's just really cute when you go to Disneyland and people are carrying around like a baby Miss Piggy. It's like, I probably made an episode your kid liked. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, that is really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any elements of storyboarding or animation that you'd like to explore more?
Yeah, because I've worked on this preschool show, it doesn't usually get too wild in terms of like crazy cameras and like crazy action. I would love to get more into the realm of action cartoons and into kind of more fast-paced kind of genres and things like that. Like I said, environments, something I need to work on. So, trying to find a project in that realm. The next couple projects I'm going to be working on are musical based, actually, which that's really exciting for me too, because I have boarded musical sequences for Muppet Babies. It's a lot of fun, and I do love drawing characters dancing and singing, and So I am excited to be heading kind of more in that direction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a cool thing about music and animation is they both involve timing. So I think they're really well suited for each other.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, we got a question in the chat about networking. Do you have any
hmm
advice generally for networking? I know that this year's been a weird year for networking since a lot
Yeah.
of in-person events are just not possible right now. But when they start back up, sometime in the future,
hmm
do you have any advice for that?
Yeah, so I think I remember like when I kind of started out going to networking events, sometimes it felt like networking was a dirty word. Sometimes it felt like, oh no, I'm using these people. I'm just trying to get to know them so that I can use them as a reference or utilize their resources. Um, One thing I kind of figured out was that that's kind of the wrong attitude to take. You should be coming into it with the intention of making friends, essentially, because that's what your network is. It's not just random people that you know and can hit up whenever, it's people that you regularly talk to, that you share your work with, that you get to know on some kind of personal level and form a friendship and a bond with. And I think just going into it as with that mindset of just like, I'm here to meet people, talk to awesome people, learn their stories, um, and just, kind of experience this phenomena of meeting a bunch of awesome people, uh, it'll probably work out in your favor. And make sure you've got business cards, because sometimes you'll need to probably exchange those, because not everybody always has cell reception in a big hotel. So you want to make sure you give them something physical to remember you by.
Yeah, we've got another question in the chat, which
hmm
is, Stefan, do you have any advice for college students? So people are currently in animation school. Were there extra classes or internships that you found really helpful to take? Things people might not have thought of
hmm
when they were looking at the course curricula.
Yeah, so I never had an internship. I did do a what we called the summer master class, where in our case we spent the whole summer doing a stop motion short film with a group of students. I thought that was a really awesome experience to have because it was kind of like being on a production. You Everybody kind of has their role and has to work together, and you develop this story together. I was technically producer, and then my friend was director, and everybody else had their roles as the puppet builders or designers, all sorts of stuff. So if you can find an experience like that, either with an internship or with a program at your school that's like that, or suggest something like that, those are really cool to do. I think one thing that I think I benefited from was taking a figure drawing course every semester because like I said, figure drawing is a great way to basically improve your skills in every other area of art because it kind of captures everything. Uh, so, and it's not as much pressure as like having a visual development class or a storyboard class, and it's not so pointless as a human evolution class, which I took that too because we had our liberals. So, if you can find that, yeah, a class that helps make drawing fun for you without all the pressure of like I need this to be a portfolio worthy awesome piece, I'd say make sure you've got an anchor on something like that if you can while you're in school.
All right. Well, that is our show for today. I just want to briefly mention that the Toon Boom Ambassador program is open from entries until December 21st. This program is intended to recognize animation artists who make exceptional use of our software, whether they're industry professionals, freelancers, educators, or hobbyists. We'll consider any candidate who advances the craft of animation using Harmony or Storyboard Pro. You can learn more at toonboom.com/community. Also, don't forget to keep tuning in to our show. Kim will be on our art stream next Tuesday. You might recognize her from our tutorial videos at learn.toonboom.com. Kim will be animating bright and early, live at 9 a.m. Eastern and 6 a.m. Pacific on December 8th. And on Thursday, in our regular time slot, Marie-Eve Lasselle will be back to take us through workflows for rough animation, cleanup, and coloring. Until next time.
Thanks, guys.